Hi everyone, welcome back. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My name is Victor. When my wife Megan wanted to be a surrogate for her rich boss, I warned her, but she went ahead. I did one thing she never imagined I would do. Megan and I had been married for 2 years when everything fell apart. 2 years that felt, in hindsight, like the opening act of something I'd mistaken for the whole story. We met when we were both working in downtown Seattle at offices in the same building. I was in project management at a tech company. Megan, on the other hand, worked as an executive assistant to the CEO of a private equity firm. We ran into each other in the building, and we got talking. Since we do not work for the same company, it was a green light to proceed into a relationship. We dated for a year before I proposed. The wedding was simple but nice. Her family came from California, mine from Oregon. We honeymooned in Hawaii for a week, came back to our rented apartment, and settled into married life. From the beginning, we'd agreed not to try for children immediately. We both had student loans. We wanted to get our finances sorted, build some savings, and establish stability before adding kids to the equation. We agreed to have a down payment made before she puts to bed, because neither of us wishes to raise kids in a cramped rented apartment. That plan initially made sense to both of us. We were practical about it, or so I thought. I made a comfortable but not extravagant salary every year. We could pay our bills, save a little, and go out occasionally. My take-home could sort a normal middle-class life in an expensive city. Megan made slightly less than me, but her job exposed her to a different world. Her boss was worth quite a lot of money. Megan, as his assistant, was around that wealth constantly, coordinating the boss's schedule, booking his travel, and attending high-end business events as his assistant. And I think that exposure started changing her expectations. About 6 months into our marriage, she started making comments about wanting nicer things. Designer handbags she'd see at events. Expensive restaurants her boss would take clients to. Vacations to places we couldn't afford. I'd remind her of our financial plan. We were paying down debt, building savings. Once we had more breathing room, we could splurge occasionally. But those conversations started creating tension. She'd accuse me of not wanting her to have nice things. I'd counter that I wanted us to be financially responsible. We'd argue, then drop it, then argue again a few weeks later. Small cracks were forming in what had seemed like a solid foundation. Then, one evening, I got home from work around 6:30 p.m. Megan was already home, which was unusual. She typically worked until 7 or 8. She was practically vibrating with excitement when I walked in. Immediately told me to sit down, that she had something important to discuss. I sat at our small dining table, confused by her energy. She explained that her boss and his wife had been trying to have a baby for years. Her boss's wife was in her mid-40s, had gone through multiple rounds of IVF without success. Their fertility doctor had suggested surrogacy using a younger woman as the best option, and they'd approached Megan about being their surrogate since she's still in her late 20s. She said it like it was winning the lottery to be picked for something like this. She saw it as an incredible, life-changing opportunity. The payment they were offering was enormous. She wouldn't say the exact amount, but implied it was 6 figures. Enough to make a significant down payment on a house. Enough to pay off all our student loans. Enough to change our financial situation dramatically. I sat there trying to process what she was saying. Finally, I asked the question that seemed most obvious. You'd be carrying another man's child inside your body for 9 months. How are you okay with that? I was genuinely confused about why she would see this as an opportunity. Megan waved away my concern, said it was just biology, just a medical procedure, really, that she'd be helping a couple who desperately wanted a child but couldn't have one naturally. She framed it as noble and generous since we are putting off having our own baby. A way to help people in need while also helping ourselves financially. I tried to articulate why it bothered me. That it wasn't just biology. That pregnancy is emotional, psychological, deeply personal. That it would change your body. That carrying a child, even someone else's child, is intimate in ways that go beyond just the physical. It felt like something we should deliberate and decide together as a married couple, not something she should agree to alone. But the more I try to make her see that I am not comfortable with this arrangement, the conversation escalates. Her voice got louder and more defensive. She accused me of being unsupportive, of not understanding the opportunity this represented, adding that her boss and his wife will take care of us during the whole process. When she saw that her arguments were doing little or nothing to change my mind, she said the words that would change everything between us. "It's my body, my choice." I sat there looking at her, completely speechless. She was right technically. It was her body. She had autonomy over her own reproductive choices. But we were married. We'd made vows about making decisions together, about being partners. And she's just about to unilaterally decide on something that would fundamentally affect both of our lives for at least a year, probably longer. I realized in that moment that something had shifted in how she saw our marriage, in how she saw me. I didn't argue further that night after she made that statement. I went to bed in silence, praying she would have a rethink of all these. Over the next few days, I watched Megan move forward with her plan without factoring in my concerns. I would observe her scheduled appointments with her boss's fertility doctor. She never approached me again with any of the surrogacy details. Despite being disrespected and blindsided, I tried one more time to have a serious conversation with her. Sat her down one morning while we were preparing for work and explained, as calmly as I could, why I was deeply uncomfortable with this. It felt like she was prioritizing money over our marriage. I felt like she'd already made the decision without really considering my feelings. This was my way of asking her to reconsider. Megan got defensive immediately, said I was stubborn and trying to be controlling, that I was trying to dictate what she could do with her own body, that I was unsupportive of something that could give us real financial breathing room. She made me feel like I was the unreasonable one, like my discomfort was a character flaw rather than a legitimate response to my wife agreeing to carry another man's child. In demonstration of how offended I was, I stopped sleeping in our bed after that conversation. I started sleeping in the guest room. The apartment was filled with quiet tension. We'd pass each other in the morning, getting ready for work, barely speaking. Come home and exist in separate rooms. This was my first time seeing Megan get comfortable with a misunderstanding we are having. Despite my clear opposition, Megan went through with the IVF procedure. She went to the fertility clinic, let them implant her boss's embryo, created with his sperm and his wife's egg, into her uterus. I found out because she came home with paperwork from the clinic that she had left on the kitchen counter. Did she do it purposely or not? I can never tell. That night, I seriously considered divorce for the first time. We'd only been married 2 years. Technically, still newlyweds. I'd imagined we'd be together for decades, growing old together and raising kids together. But the woman sleeping in our bedroom felt like a stranger. Someone who'd made a massive life decision that affected both of us, without truly considering my perspective. Still, I had cold feet about actually filing. Divorce felt so final and so permanent. Part of me hoped she'd realize what she'd done and we could somehow repair things. But instead, she became increasingly detached from me and increasingly obsessed with the pregnancy. After the first ultrasound confirmed the embryo had implanted successfully, she was ecstatic, showing me photos on her phone that I didn't want to see. Talking about morning sickness was like it was an adventure. I watched her stop trying to connect with me emotionally. It was like our marriage had become background noise to the much more important thing happening in her body, which broke my heart. About 6 weeks after the IVF procedure, I made my decision. It was a difficult one, but I had to do it. I contacted a divorce attorney, a family law specialist who came recommended by a close friend who'd gone through his own divorce. I explained my situation to the attorney. She was sympathetic but direct, said that while my feelings were understandable, Washington was a no-fault divorce state. We'd need to divide assets, but the surrogacy itself wouldn't be a major factor in the proceedings. I told her to draw up the papers because I was dying inside with the passing of each day with her in that house. It took about a week. When I received them, I brought them home one evening and set them on the kitchen table, where Megan would see them when she got home from work. I was already there when she arrived, sitting at the table, waiting for her to come home that day. She walked in, saw the papers, and immediately picked them up. I watched as her face went through confusion, then shock, then anger. She looked up at my face to ask what this was, if I were serious. I told her, calmly and without raising my voice, "You chose them over me. Just remember that when this is over." Megan's anger exploded as she accused me of being insecure. To her, I was trying to punish her for making a decision she felt was financially smart. Said I was abandoning her during a vulnerable time, that I was supposed to support her no matter what. I didn't engage with the accusations. Just told her I'd be staying with a friend for a while, that she could reach me through my attorney for anything related to the divorce. I packed a small bag with essentials and left that night. The divorce process officially began weeks later. Washington requires a 90-day waiting period from the time divorce papers are filed until they can be finalized. But the actual process took longer because we had to divide assets, work out financial details. We'd accumulated some shared property over our time together. Furniture, a joint bank account with modest savings, and 2 cars we were both still paying off. The negotiations dragged on. Megan's attorney, whom she had hired quickly after being served, tried to argue she deserved more of our shared assets because of her condition. The pregnancy made her more vulnerable financially. My attorney shut that down quickly. Megan had chosen to become pregnant. That was not my responsibility. By the time we reached a final settlement, it had been months since I'd filed. Megan's belly had grown noticeably in that time. I saw her once during a required mediation session. She was visibly pregnant, maybe 5 months along. It felt surreal, like looking at a life that could have been mine but had been given to someone else. The divorce was finalized after 6 months. We signed the final papers in a conference room at my attorney's office, divided everything with the percentage that the court gave us, and went our separate ways. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment across town. Started rebuilding my life as a single person. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Megan was doing well, that the pregnancy was progressing normally. I tried not to think about it, focusing on work and anything that could take my mind away from everything. I was trying my best to figure out who I was outside of being Megan's husband. Then, about 2 months after our divorce was finalized, I heard from a close mutual friend that Megan had given birth. But there had been a situation between her boss. There had been some issues with the surrogacy agreement. Even though I wanted to know what happened, I didn't ask for details, but the mutual friend told me anyway. The delivery had been successful, but Megan's boss had considered some of Megan's actions during the pregnancy and after the birth as a breach of confidentiality. The surrogacy agreement had included strict privacy clauses, which Megan had broken by sharing details of her pregnancy. They told Megan they were backing out of the deal, refusing to pay her and refusing to take the baby. According to the mutual friend, Megan was panicking, that she consulted a lawyer but was told the contract might not even be enforceable because I'd never consented to it, apparently. There was a clause requiring spousal consent that Megan had either overlooked or ignored. I listened to all these with a strange detachment. This was exactly the kind of nightmare scenario I'd warned Megan about. But I felt no satisfaction in being right, just a kind of weary sadness. Weeks after the baby was born, Megan's mother called me. I almost didn't answer. We hadn't spoken since before the divorce. But something made me pick up. Her mother's voice was strained. She told me Megan had given birth to a healthy baby boy. But Megan's boss and his wife had refused to take him. They were claiming the surrogacy contract was void. Megan was with a newborn she'd never intended to keep, with no money, no plan, and no support from the people who'd promised to pay her. Megan's mother asked if I'd come and talk to Megan, help her figure out what to do. I said no as gently as I could. Told her I was sorry for the situation, but it wasn't my responsibility. She started crying. Said I had a past with Megan, that I was supposed to stand by her. I corrected her quietly. I was her ex-husband. Megan had made her decision without me. Now she had to live with the consequences. Megan's mother tried to guilt me. Said marriage was about being there during hard times. That this qualified as a hard time. I stayed calm while telling Megan's mother that Megan had demonstrated pretty clearly that she didn't value my input or my feelings. That she'd chosen money over our marriage. That I'd tried to warn her, and she'd called me controlling and unsupportive. I told her I hoped Megan would find a solution, but I wouldn't be part of it. Megan's mother hung up on me. Over the next week, I got calls from other members of Megan's family. They all had variations of the same message. I needed to help Megan. She'd made a mistake, but that didn't mean I should abandon her. I gave them all essentially the same response. That Megan was an adult who'd made her choices. That I tried to warn her and she dismissed my concerns. That I wished her well, but I'd moved on with my life. Then, Megan called me directly. Her name appeared on my phone, and I stared at it for several rings before answering. When I picked, she said she didn't know what to do. That her boss's lawyers were claiming she'd breached the contract. That her own lawyer had told her the contract might not be valid anyway because of the missing spousal consent. That she was stuck with a baby she'd never planned to raise. With no money. With her savings depleted from the pregnancy expenses that her boss was refusing to reimburse. She said she'd been misled. The boss had promised this would be straightforward. That she trusted him because he was her boss, and she thought he had her best interests in mind. She begged me to come back. Said she regretted everything. That she should have listened to me. That she understood now why I'd been so opposed. I listened quietly, without interrupting. Let her say everything she needed to say. When she finally stopped talking, I said a few things to her. I reminded her that she'd called it her body, her choice. That she was right about that. It was her body and her choice. But marriage is supposed to be our choice. About making big decisions together. About respecting each other's boundaries and concerns. She'd chosen to make that decision alone, without truly considering my perspective or my feelings, which meant she'd chosen to live with the outcome alone, too. I told her I hoped she'd figure things out, that I genuinely didn't wish suffering on her, but I wouldn't be coming back, wouldn't be helping, wouldn't be taking responsibility for consequences I tried to warn her about. Then I ended the call. I blocked her number after that. Blocked her family members. I was done having those conversations. I later heard occasional updates over the following months. Megan had apparently sued her boss and his wife, trying to enforce the surrogacy contract and get the payment she'd been promised. The case was messy. Both sides had lawyers. There were questions about whether the contract had ever been legally binding, about whether Megan's social media post constituted a material breach, about the spousal consent clause. I didn't follow it closely, didn't care to know how it ended. It wasn't my problem, hadn't been my problem for months. I moved on with my life. Sometimes I think about Megan, wonder how she's doing, whether she kept the baby or gave him up for adoption. Whether she ever got any money from her boss. Whether she learned anything from the experience. But those thoughts are fleeting. She's not part of my life anymore. The choices she made ensured that. I learned something important from that marriage and its ending. Betrayal isn't always cheating or lies. Sometimes betrayal is when someone unilaterally decides the rules of your relationship have changed. When they make massive decisions that affect both of you, without truly considering whether you're on board. When they prioritize money or opportunity or their own desires over the partnership you thought you'd built. Megan said it was her body, her choice. She was right, but I had a choice too. My peace, my boundaries, my freedom, and I chose myself. People sometimes ask if I feel guilty or if I regret not helping her when everything fell apart. The answer is no. I feel sad about how things ended. Sad that our marriage couldn't survive her decision. Sad that she's dealing with consequences I tried to warn her about. But I don't feel guilty. I gave her my perspective. Explained my boundaries clearly. begged her to reconsider. She chose to move forward anyway, called me controlling and unsupportive for expressing legitimate concerns. You can't force someone to value your input or make them see you as a partner if they've decided to see you as an obstacle. All you can do is decide whether you'll stay and accept being diminished or leave and preserve your self-respect. I chose to leave, and I'd make the same choice again. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is walk away from someone who's made it clear they don't value your role in their life. Even if that someone is your spouse. Even if that means they face difficult consequences alone. You can't save someone from decisions they insisted on making despite your warnings. You can only save yourself. That's what I did. And I've never regretted it.